Hello, friends, and welcome to Mysterious Mondays. Tattooed Biker here with you. And I know you were expecting Missing Mondays, but I've created a true crime channel where I'll cover the missing cases as well as strange and unsolved crimes, so we can focus on the unexplained and the paranormal here. And speaking of which, I have a couple of really strange encounters with, well, I don't know. I don't know what these were, really. That's for you to decide. So, enough rambling, and now, let's ride. Number 1. Dear Tattooed, I'm a cop. My zone partner and I park our patrol vehicles at the bottom of a long dirt road that leads to an abandoned school. We only do this on night shift, when it starts to get slow around 1 a.m. It's a relatively safe place for us to catch up on paperwork, or maybe even watch some YouTube. We've had several odd experiences there, from strange lights that maneuver quickly in the woods to possible UFO sightings. We even found a body down there years ago that still hasn't been identified. But that's not even the most terrifying. This was around October of 2020, around 2 a.m. It was dead night. Crime was low that time of year, partly because of COVID, and partly because it was cold. We had our parked vehicles side by side, facing opposite directions, so that the driver's side windows line up. This is common in our line of work. My partner gets dispatched to a noise complaint and leaves. I use the time to step out and relieve my bladder. As I'm standing outside, I hear a whistle in the woods that are across the abandoned school grounds. These woods are approximately 100 yards from where I'm parked. The whistle was a tune, like it came from a human mouth, and it was oddly loud. We do have a homeless problem in my city, but not in the area I patrol. But I assume a homeless person must have wandered their way to the south side of the city. I get back in my car and roll my window up, anxiously awaiting my partner's return. My partner returns after about 20 minutes, and I tell him the story, and we move on to other topics. I'm a believer in the paranormal, but he's a skeptic. Within about 30 minutes, he decides that he needs to relieve his bladder also. So he steps out and walks to the rear of his patrol car. He's back there for around 5 seconds, and boom, we hear it again. A loud whistle to the tune of a slow song. The whistle lasts for maybe 10 seconds. He walks back to my window, and his face is a pale, milky white. So as cops do, we decide to investigate. We grab our flashlights and start slowly walking through the field. The grass is as high as our waist. We get to about halfway to the field, and we hear it again. But this time it sounds like it's coming from our right side, where the school is. As we are standing there with our flashlights shining at the school, we begin to see the grass start to move. There's no wind, the grass isn't moving around us. It looks like something is crawling through the field. The grass is moving in a slow, straight path right towards us. We begin walking towards the movement. At this point, we both have our hands on our firearms. The air is eerily still, and you can see our breath from the cold. I can tell that my partner is uneasy. We are walking very slow and quietly. As we get to about 20 feet away from the moving grass, it suddenly stops, and we hear the whistle, coming from exactly from where our flashlights are shining at the now still grass. We're frozen in fear, and we're too scared to speak to each other. It feels like minutes passed, but it was probably only a few seconds. I go to take a step forward, and all of a sudden the grass starts moving again. This time away from us, towards the woodline. Only this time it's fast, far too fast for us to run after. So we just stand and watch. We watch as the moving grass reaches the woods. We both have our lights focused on it. And again, here comes the whistle, coming from the woods where the grass just stopped moving. Only this time the whistle is quiet. This is the part that shocks us. We are now shining our lights into the woods, and there are several large trees in our view. This thing stands up. It looked like a child, but not somehow. It's hard to explain. Despite our light shining directly onto the figure, it seemed amassed in darkness. Before we could even call out, it stepped behind a tree and was gone. We gathered up the courage to go after it. As we get to the tree, we don't find anything. No footprints, no leaves crunching like you would expect to hear in autumn. It was like it had simply vanished into nothing. We spent the next hour checking reports for missing children in the area, but we couldn't find anything. The creepiest part is that it must have been running on all fours when it was in the grass. We have a children's psychiatric hospital in the city, but they had no reports of escapees. To this day, we can't explain it, and to this day we continue to park there. 3 years have passed, and we've never had another experience like that. But my partner is now a believer, and everyone at the department thinks we're crazy. Either way, I just wanted to share my story. Sincerely, Ron. Number 2. Hey, biker. I've had this story on my mind for a long, long time. I've always been a fan of the supernatural and the cryptid scene, but never had any standout experiences myself. I've lived in the northern Midwest my whole life and have come to appreciate the local lore that comes with. This is the story about my first real cryptid experience. It's a long one, but I hope you enjoy. In my late teens, I worked at a camp for a few summers. The camp was massive, with only about 1/5 of it being equipped for hospitality, like a dining hall, cabins, shower houses, etc., and the rest just being wilderness. The land had 6 lakes on it, all connected by small rivers. What made this camp particularly eerie, however, was that it was actually built around a Potawatomi burial ground. I won't get into the legends around the burial mounds, but overall this place checked all the boxes for a B-list horror movie. Now my job at camp was sort of a catch-all. I was a program director, lifeguard, cook, gift shop manager. Basically, if they needed a role filled, I was the one doing it. It kept me busy, and I had many long days. I would close the gift shop around 7 each night, then head upstairs to the kitchen. I would walk back to my cabin if I wanted, but the cook hated the dark. Baby-faced crying hated the dark. So I'd help him with the dishes and cutting fruit for breakfast, and then walk him to his cabin. I have one rule, though. No flashlights. You can't see very well in the woods if your eyes are focused on a small beam of light. I hated the idea of people or animals sneaking up on us. So every night in the moonlight, I would walk him to his cabin, then walk the public road to mine. My ulterior motive for taking the public road was, well, I'm a smoker, and we have to be good role models for the kids. No smoking in camp, but they can't tell you what to do on public property. My cabin was right on the edge of the hospitable portion of the land. Miles of marshlands and forest sat behind my cabin, and fortunately, or unfortunately, I had the cabin to myself. But the weird thing was that every night I would be smoking and walking the public road, and I would hear screaming out in the woods. It sounded like a woman was being murdered. I brushed it off the first night. There's a public access lake. People get rowdy. Sound carries. Could be a prank or a fox or an owl. It's the woods after all. But it kept happening. Every night. As soon as I stepped onto that road. I decided not to let it bother me. I had to be up early every day. No sense in chasing noises in the dark. I would get to my cabin, spread some tobacco for the land, and sleep soundly every night. Well, the end of summer came around. It was always bittersweet. You eat 3 meals a day with the same people for 3 months, and they start to grow on you. One goodbye tradition we'd kept up over the years was on the final new moon of the camp season, the ranger would take the staff for a spirit walk. It was always good fun, and he'd share the legends of the land with the new staff and try to shake them up. We would hike through the back of the camp, around the marshes and the lakes, and see what kind of spooky things we could stir up. We all met at the only street light on the public road that night, but that year the ranger had his rifle slung over his shoulder. We ran into a cougar the year before, and 2 wolves lived in the back property, so I didn't think very much of it. The rules are simple. No flashlights, no jingling keys, no running. If you run, we might not find you. There were half to scare people and half true. The woods were thick and the marshes were kind of dangerous. Everything was going smoothly till we reached a river crossing not too far from the public road. It takes you to a clearing, just before the trail reconnects with the road around my cabin. The moment we crossed the bridge, the woods went dead silent. You could hear yourself breathing. That, my friends, is one of the scariest things that can happen to you in the woods. The sudden silence. And then, just like every night before, a blood-curdling scream ripped across the clearing. One of the new staff was about to take off before myself and another grabbed his arm. "That's the screaming I've been hearing," I told my boss. "That's the screaming I hear every night." The ranger shushed everyone. The scream came again, louder this time. The ranger whistled in the direction of the noise. It whistled back. Suddenly, the screaming surrounded us. Behind us, to the right, to the left, the group closed in, shoulder to shoulder, not daring even to breathe. The ranger, ever serious and calm, said barely over a whisper, "We're turning around. Take the bridge back to the trail. We're going to go the long way." So, in hurried steps, we made our way back to the streetlight that we met under without muttering a word. Once we were in the light again, I could tell that the ranger was actually shaken up. This is the same man that was charged by a cougar in the dark and brushed it off. "I need a cigarette." "You haven't smoked in like 2 years." He said again that I need a cigarette. I wasn't about to argue with the man holding a rifle, so I obliged. After a few drags, he muttered, "I don't want to scare anyone, but I only know one creature that can mimic human voices like that." "It's a wendigo," I said, not even thinking. I was in shock. All summer I walked that road, and this thing had been out there, screaming, trying to lure me into the woods. That's when he said that, yes, he's thinking the same thing. He first thought it was one of the neighboring property owners looking for their dog, calling out for them. So he whistled. Then he explained the gun. All spring, he said, he was finding deer strolling about the property. Not unusual, being the woods and all, but there were so many, and so brutally taken down. He said these things looked like they had been hit by cars, only out in the middle of the woods, absolutely mangled. More bizarrely, no other animals would touch them. No tracks that said that a bear, wolf, or cougar had gotten to them. He was worried with something bringing big game down like that, so he had brought along his rifle. No one said much after that. My boss got sage from her cabin and gave everyone who asked for one a blessing. We were all deeply shaken. After that, I changed cabins. I didn't own much in general at the time, so I wasn't troubled in the least to get off the public road. Didn't even care that I had to row out to the middle of the lake to have a cigarette. I wasn't stepping foot back near that road. And I'm a little sorry to say I never stepped foot back on that property. Call me superstitious or lily-livered or what have you, but I couldn't bring myself to ever go back into those woods, not even if you paid me. Thanks so much for reading. Signed, Aubrey. And there it is. All I have for tonight. Thanks for watching. What did you think about these unexplained encounters? Were they cryptids or something else? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and If you have an unexplained encounter that you'd like to share, send me an email, sparing no details. The address is in the description, and your story just might make it into a future video. So till next time, stay curious, stay vigilant, stay safe, and I'll be seeing you on down the road a ways. Biker, out.